Still This Love Goes On, written by Buffy Sainte-Marie and illustrated by Julie Flett. It's Indigenous Peoples Day here in the States, and we're going to celebrate with a brand new book, an adapted song from Buffy Sainte-Marie, an Indigenous Canadian-American singer-songwriter, digital art pioneer, and activist. Sainte-Marie has been writing, recording, and performing music since the 1960s. In mainstream American popular culture, her best-known songwriting credit was when she co-wrote the Oscar-winning song, Up Where We Belong. But her musical catalog is vast, diverse, and often centrally activist. She's pretty famous in Canada, but would likely have been much more of a household name here in the States to this day if it weren't for the blacklisting of the Red Power movements of the 70s. As I mentioned, the text of this book is taken from a song that Sainte-Marie wrote around 2010. If you want to listen to it, which I highly recommend, you can find it on her album Running for the Drum. And if you want to learn to play and sing the song, the sheet music is in the back of the book. Fantastic. This book is about the continual flow of love, even in the absence of our loved ones, particularly as that love moves through the natural seasons around us, and the community that continues to persist. It's about continuing an inherited song, an inherited way of life. In both the book itself and in the author's note at the end, Sainte-Marie makes clear that this is a book about the Cree Nation specifically, and she also hopes that it helps the reader remember their loved ones who are absent with just as much joy. As the great Catholic mystic Henri Nouwen was fond of saying, that which is most personal is actually the most universal. But, although it would often be my instinct to do so, today I did not choose because of its universality, but because of its particularity. This book is about the joy of the existence of the Cree Nation, both in ceremonial and mundane moments. For peoples on the receiving end of violence, the activism of narratives that trace the history of violence and oppression from their perspective are obviously vitally important. But the activism of narratives like this one, that intentionally, myopically celebrate the incredible beauty and glory of a people, that delights in the continued life of that which others sought to destroy. This kind of story is also centrally important to the empowerment and restoration of peoples who have survived unspeakable persecution, especially over disastrously long periods of time. The affirmation of and immersion in ongoing community is the most important thing. I hope relaying a brief anecdote from my life does honor to the spirit of Sainte-Marie, who has enthusiastically engaged all sorts of faiths and peoples throughout her long career. Although I am Jewish, I was not raised in any kind of Jewish community, and so the only way I had to learn about my heritage was through books. And basically all of the stories that I found about being Jewish were about the Holocaust. There is no question that these stories are essential to remember, but they did not help me understand any of the cultural, spiritual, or interpersonal gifts of being Jewish. Only the pain. When I was able to experience our community's ongoing story, our ongoing life, my heart immediately filled with the joy of being Jewish. I think Sainte-Marie's book is intended to work in much the same way for the children of the Cree Nation, and for other Indigenous kids. You need to hear the preciousness of your lives. To fully partake in the joy you have as family, community, and tribe, it is important to relay the source of a people's pain to our children. But pain is not the whole story of any nation. Love is the key story. Love is the story that persists. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day, everyone. For those of you who are like myself, descendants of European colonizers, may we more and more actively and effectively seek the restoration of and reparations for Indigenous communities. The picture is always bigger. So people, we're just a couple of weeks out from a couple of major holidays, Halloween and Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. People often mistakenly think that these are somehow the same holiday. They are not. Dia de los Muertos is specifically a Mexican holiday, taking place over 2 days, November 1st and 2nd. We're going to look at some books for both holidays, although not nearly enough for Dia de Muertos, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, this year, I'm still in transition from Southern California to who knows where, and so a lot of my books, including one of my other favorites for this holiday, are down south with the rest of my collection. This is nothing. Trust me, you should see the whole thing when it's all together. Terrifying. But of course, we have the incredible Flavia Z Drago's books, Gustavo the Shy Ghost, and brand new Leila the Perfect Witch. I've already walked through these in another video, but guys, I'm just reiterating, go out and get these. There's even an edition of Gustavo at Barnes & Noble that comes with Papel Picado in Gustavo form. Just get it. Go. But yes, out of the books that are missing from my current shelves, my other favorite Dia de los Muertos book is Los Gatos Black on Halloween, written by Marisa Montes and illustrated by the great Yuyi Morales. It's a fully bilingual and bi-holiday book. It's beautiful, it's fun, it's about 6 years old. I know for a fact you can get it used because that's how I got it, but I believe they also have new softback copies available. There are lots of other books about Dia de los Muertos. Most of them are far more informational and educational about the holiday, but I like the 3 books that I just recommended because they are much more immersive into the holiday rather than being about a holiday. Holidays should never just be about explanations, unless perhaps we're talking about Passover. On to Halloween. My love of the Madeline books has been well established on this channel. And so, of course, the first time I saw a Frankenstein parody of Madeline, I knew I had to have it ASAP. It says it's by Ludworst Bemonster, but it was actually written by Rick Walton and illustrated by Nathan Hale, the latter of which publishes an incredible line of historical graphic novels for children. But in my opinion, he does a great job mimicking Bemelmans. In a creepy old castle, all covered with spines, lived 12 angry monsters in 2 crooked lines. They bit the good and gobbled the bad. They even tried to devour your dad. In this version, instead of an appendix situation, Frankenstein gets a brand new head, new bolts, the works. And Miss Deville, yes, you heard it right, ends up with a bunch of headless monsters. Boo-hoo, we want new heads and bolts too. Wait a minute, you're leaving me in the laboratory? Seriously, a delight. A must-have for all Halloween and Madeline fans. Next, we have The Little Kitten by Nicola Killen. Killen has done a whole series of books like this for different seasons with different animals. They are so cute. I can't handle it. If you want something for Halloween that's a little sweet without going full-on saccharine, go find this one. Ollie and her cat Pumpkin go outside to enjoy the leaves. Behold the snazzy leaves. And they find a little tiny shivering black kitten. After they have a bunch of fun together, Ollie makes sure that the kitten makes his way home. When suddenly, Ollie realizes that she forgot to bring Pumpkin with her, and now she's lost and all by herself. Oh no! But Pumpkin finds her soon enough, and thank God, Pumpkin knows the way home. And Ollie is not the only one happily reunited with her cat. Ollie gilding in this book is really special, and seriously, it's just darling. If this is your kind of thing, find it right now. The Hallo-Weiner by Dav Pilkey. My retired teacher mother loved using this in her classroom at Halloween. If the name Dav Pilkey sounds familiar, you might have a young child, as he is the creator of Dogman and Captain Underpants, and also the transitional readers about Dragon. If you've never seen Dragon, I highly recommend you give it a whirl. But today, we have the Hallo-Weiner. My mom and I both love dachshunds. We both used to have them. This particular dachshund is 1.5 dog tall and 1.5 dogs long, and he is mocked for it. His mother does not help the situation. Farewell, my little Vienna sausage. Yeah, your classmates will make fun of you too. When Halloween rolls around, Oscar is very, very excited about it until his mother gives him a present. Quite possibly the most cliched Halloween costume a wiener dog could possibly wear. And everyone knows it. After continuing to be mistreated by the other dogs, they all fall into a lake and are terrorized by this monster, which turns out to be 2 cats in a sheet. And wouldn't you know it, but Oscar saves the day for all the jerks that made his life miserable just about 5 minutes before. But now they love him and everything's great, and yeah! I love this one. Now we're going to talk about There's a Ghost in This House by the inimitable Oliver Jeffers. So I do have one thing to say about this particular book. Jeffers released this last Halloween, but unfortunately because of that whole kerfuffle in the Suez Canal, this book only reached the States on November 2nd, probably costing him a decent amount of sales. So booksellers, I feel we should treat this as a new release and talk the heck out of it, because it's great. I mean, I own a ton of Jeffers, and Jeffers is always great, but that's beside the point. This particular book is so unusual. Jeffers, who is both a fine artist and a picture book creator, chose to take all of the backgrounds from old architectural magazines. It creates a really distinct look that is obviously vintage but also kind of displacing, kind of generic, and kind of stylized. Honestly, just having this little blue character, the kid who lives in the house, in these backgrounds is super groovy on its own. But wait, there's more. On nearly every single spread of this book, you have something that looks like this, where you have the little girl in her house, and you have this page over here that's just, white with font on it. Or is it? It turns out that there are extra pages of vellum that meld so seamlessly onto the white pages that they're really hard to discern. And you flip them over, and there's always a ghost in this house, it turns out. And they start getting more and more pronounced. Until there's practically a ghost party going on in this house. The little girl in the house, however, never sees any of them, and perhaps she never will. Besides being a really fun story for all ages, this is straight up gorgeous and innovative bookmaking. Figuring out how to make a book like this for the mass market cannot be easy. But since when has Mr. Jeffers been interested in easy? This one is my top Halloween recommendation of the year. It's different and fun, and frankly, in function and visual, kind of a wow. And lastly, one of my other favorite Halloween books to come out last year, Poultrygeist by Eric Geron and illustrated by the great Pete Oswald. Have you ever wanted to know what happens to the chicken when it tries to cross the road but doesn't quite make it? Poultrygeist will tell you. Poultrygeist delivers. I mean, this is all before the title page. After the truck incident, the chicken wants to know what the heck happened to me. I was just trying to get to the other side. One of the other spirits says, "You mean the other side." Guys, it's just so silly and vaguely spooky, and I love it. Especially when the chicken finally finds his niche. And the book leaves you with a sense that maybe this whole thing might be cyclical? Look both ways. Don't be next. Anyway, everybody, I hope that your Dia de los Muertos and Halloween preparations are going well. I know mine are rather promising. And you may well be asking, hey Britta, I thought this was a picture book channel for adults. What about Edward Gorey? I have not forgotten about Edward Gorey. He's just getting his own video later this month. So stay tuned, because the picture, as you've probably gathered, is always bigger. Ooh. Today is a bit of a love letter to a certain category of book that most of you might think, is that even really a book? And I am here to say, well, of course it is. I'm talking about all the little gifty and or inspiration books up by the counter of your bookstore. You know what I'm talking about. The Golden Girls, Star Wars, How to Avoid Death in an English Village. Actual example from my last stint as a bookseller. Not sure why I didn't buy that one. It seems pretty useful. So today's pick, with no author listed, is this book is literally just pictures of animals silently judging you. All my friends in real life know that I would have had to have this on the spot. I mean, come on. The judge is strong with these ones. You know the look. So regal. So judgy. Are you okay? But seriously though, you forgot, didn't you? Britta, really? This is your point? Yes, as a matter of fact, it is my point. Every book does not have to be a deep enterprise. Sometimes it's just a silly, stupid, freaking delight. All hail the books by the register. What would my whimsy, or my coffee table, do without thee? Interestingly, drumroll please, most of these books by the register are in fact some form of picture book. It might actually say something about adult picture books being relegated to the silly. And if they're ghettoized into that, I'm not for it. But that doesn't mean that some silliness ought not to persist. Persist it must. I insist that it persist. Sometimes you just need a collection of judgment, okay? Even if it's just 60 seconds of your life. Isn't it made much better by all of these animals shamelessly judging you? Even when it is decidedly and intentionally dumb. The picture is always bigger. Even when it's small. Today it is my distinct pleasure to share with you The Library Book, written by Gabby Donnet and illustrated by Ian Morris. This book and the people behind it are near and dear to my heart. As I mentioned before, I used to work in the country's best children's department, at least in my experience it sure as heck is, Chaucer's Books in Santa Barbara. And during the first couple of years of the pandemic, we did all of our author talks online. Somehow, some of the higher-ups thought maybe Britta would be good at doing some interviews. So there's a small handful of those over on Chaucer's Books channel. Shameless plug, if you're ever anywhere near Santa Barbara, go to Chaucer's. You will not be disappointed. Tell them I sent you. Tell them I'll be stopping by soon. I miss you guys. Anyway, this particular event happened because I begged for it. When this book crossed our desk, I lost my mind. First of all, just look at the cover. When I was bookselling, I used to joke a lot about the curb appeal of a given book. I don't know how else to describe that sort of gut instant reaction you have when you look at the cover of something. This book has one of the best curb appeals I have ever seen. The color theory is both insanely good and insanely bright. That is not particularly easy to accomplish. The way that the shelves bring a nice central axis to this comes from a person who really knows how to construct an image and suck you straight in. My second thought when I saw this cover was, this guy's style reminds me a lot of the great Quentin Blake, best known as Roald Dahl's illustrator, who thankfully is still with us and still drawing. This is in no way a copy. You could argue that there's some homage there, but Morris has taken it so much farther into something almost entirely new, while still bringing forward something really remarkable from the past. Yeah, before I even opened this book, I was sold. But then, once you open this book, you're confronted with Gabby Donnet's perfect, wonderful rhyme. It turns out that Donnet writes all sorts of incredible things for children, from poetry to television, and her words are just impeccable. In our Chaucer's interview, she explained to me that this is basically Green Eggs and Ham, but for books. No! I don't like books. I really don't. I will not read them. No! I won't! You see, this whole book is pretty much a battle of wills between book hater Zach and library fanatic Ro. At first it seems like a pretty decent contest of wills, but Ro's viewpoint soon wins out. I mean, she does pitch a pretty good sell here. Have you tried adventure books with superheroes, cops, and crooks? Or ancient legends, pirate tales with buried treasure, sharks, and whales? Once again, I want to return to Morris's illustration for a second. I love this pirate shark. He's especially good at either conflating elements that are in a piece to say, okay, this is about pirates and about sharks, let's have a pirate shark. Or when Ro is talking about how books are long or short, there is a decidedly long book. One of my favorite illustrations comes when Zach says that books make him fall asleep, and so Morris made a book tent for snoozing. Even though Zach is trying to argue that he prefers TV, Ro continues to argue with the absolutely fantastical things she finds in books, including some things you might later find on television. And yes, I have confirmed that right there is smell. vogue. Seriously, is this spread not gorgeous? Books on spiders, snakes, and lizards. Books on witches, books on wizards. A book could help you banish plastic, save our planet. How fantastic. And after all of these incredibly colorful arguments, Ro has turned the tide, and Zach does not want his reading disturbed. There is just so much fun built out of so much craftsmanship. To say it is refreshing would be an understatement. It is not just a matter of rhyming final sounds, but you have to meticulously pay attention to the meter. For example, but books make stories come alive. Just open up and in you'll dive. If somebody less skilled was trying that, and this is pretty rudimentary, but go with me here, it might become, but books make stories come alive. Just open up and in you will dive. It's not terrible, but truncating you will to you'll keeps the meter incredibly crisp, and the meter is actually the thing that drives the bus. These comics, poems, and picture books all wait like paper fishing hooks to reel you in, and with a tug, you've gone and caught the reading bug. There are very few people publishing picture books marketed to children who write in rhyme with that exactitude. I know I told you this at the time, but Gabby, brilliant work. Still one of my favorites. And dear Mr. Morris, I feel that I have gone on about your illustration quite a bit and could certainly continue to do so at length. I have plenty more to say about these illustrations. I have plenty to say about your brand new illustrations. And guess what, people of this channel? You're gonna get to hear all of it because I got to interview Ian Morris for the big picture yesterday, and you're gonna love it. I intend to release an edit on Instagram and a longer, much more in-depth version of our time together on YouTube. So check your feeds this next Monday because you're in for a distinct treat. Not to mention the first interview in the life of this channel. Woo! And I hope it's the first of many. That picture just keeps getting bigger and 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 bigger. Once again, we're here for Theory Fridays on The Big Picture, and today I just want to talk for a few minutes about why I still collect physical books. As someone who does have pretty big concerns about our environment, there has been some internal conflict on this point. Should I continue to buy books in paper form? One interesting thing I learned is that it's not so clear-cut that ebooks are more ecologically sound. Anything that we do digitally requires servers, and that requires a lot of power and a lot of hardware. So I'm not making excuses, but also, for the most part, I have not abandoned physical books for the digital. I have a small digital library, but I would say that 99% of my books are physical. So while this video might not be an exhaustive description about why I collect physical books, here are some big reasons. 1, I like to remember that every single book is its own distinct world. And when it comes to picture books, I consider every single one of these worlds to be an immersive piece of art. Where else are you going to find a body of work, typically printed beautifully in color, of this quality and cohesion? Of course, if there is a partnership between a separate author and illustrator, it is not just about the illustrator's work. But in storybooks in particular, that artwork combined with that narration becomes a whole different kind of art, something that engages so many different parts of our minds and our hearts. And even in the rare books without words, every single book is a new dive into someone's miraculously made-up universe. So books as pieces of art, books as contained worlds. That's my first sort of combined answer to the question. The second point is that collected physical books are part of our history. As I've shared before, the Maggie Bee is the first book I ever remember hearing read to me. And this is my mom's classroom copy from somewhere in the mid-70s, which then became my copy. It's a yellowed softback of a book long out of print. But to me, this is the origin story of my quest for freedom and adventure, something that I've never gone without since. Or this copy of The Nutshell Library by the late, great Maurice Sendak. We had this set of 4 perfect little books when I was a kid, and my parents' set is still at their house. But when I graduated from college in 2001, somebody gave me a gift certificate to a store that happened to be selling these at the time. I don't always remember when and where I got my books. Not all of them bring nearly as much meaning as this particular set of books do, but I do remember where I got a huge amount of my books, and they often bring me back to distinct points in my life. Looking back, I realized that this little guy was a statement of my joy from where I'd been and my ability to fend for myself moving forward. I didn't need to take anybody else's copy. My own copy would find its way to me. My third answer as to why I still collect physical books has to do with sharing them. I have often viewed my shelves as a sort of library for my friends and acquaintances to peruse as they come over. With COVID, that has been a while, but it's something that's coming back and that I intend to do more often soon. And as a part of that sharing of books, there are some books that I like to have as objects lying around my house when people come over, in order to inspire and delight them, or just to entertain the hell out of them. I cannot describe to you the hours of laughter my friends and I have gotten out of one book that I got at a Hanukkah White Elephant exchange, simply titled Bad Hair. There was a male presenting section followed by a female presenting section, and guys, Dr. Seuss had nothing on half of this hair. I remember during that exchange, one of my friends remarking about how stupid it was that somebody would want that book, and half an hour later, I heard him laughing like a little girl from across the shul. So, sometimes it's just a lot of fun to have these objects around to flip through, to inspire, and yes, to laugh a lot. My fourth answer has to do with keepsakes from the creators themselves. While I am not nearly as big of an autograph hound as some people I know, it is still pretty fun to get autographs, especially in books you really love. Chris Van Dusen's Circus Ship is one of the greatest books on my shelf. It is a contemporary classic that I hope will become an enduring classic. While I haven't profiled him on this channel yet, that day is coming. And right before I left Chaucer's, I got to experience my one and only in-person children's event since the pandemic began. And Chris and Lori Van Dusen were absolutely marvelous. My comrade in arms Suzanne and I had the best time with them. I mean, we really geeked out. And Chris signed my book. Because I have this physical copy and dated it in the front, I will always remember that I met Chris and Lori Van Dusen at Chaucer's in Santa Barbara on the 14th of June, 2022. Some people look at autographed copies of books as something that's supposed to have market value. Nah. Objects like this are absolutely priceless. Also, he brought the coolest bookmarks. And lastly, I have still not found a way to write a proper dedication, much less draw a doodle in, an ebook. Chaucer's books, more than anywhere else I've worked, truly became my work family while I was there. My body was not hacking that kind of work, and so I had to leave. And I was absolutely heartbroken. Guys, I'm still a little heartbroken. And usually everybody signs a card when someone leaves. I requested this book, Dr. Seuss's Did I Ever Tell You How Lucky You Are? Which was a book of his that I did not own before, but also that was the sentiment that I thought of when I thought of working with all of my friends. And again, I wrote in the front so that I would remember that I received this on the 28th of June, 2022. But the fact that all of my colleagues, my dear friends, wrote me notes here, that this lives on my shelf alongside all of my other beloved books, it reminds me of how loved I've been. There's nothing quite like having a time capsule of words, whether it's from one person or a whole group of people, commemorating a time when you were together. While this kind of thing is a rarity in my collection, and probably in a lot of people's collections, these are some of my most prized possessions. Physical books are not just objects, and they're not just super heavy when it comes time to move house. You can imagine what that's like for me. They are all different manner of portals. They are worlds. They are time capsules. They are themselves beloved friends. The picture is always bigger.